Hi folks, welcome to Friday's edition of the I Write Radio podcast stroke videocast. Hat Friday today. Those of you that are watching the video will have noticed. This is just to remind us that there are still Fridays in the week, even though we can't go to the pub.
It is very true. I'm hoping to ask for you for some advice about that in a minute. Nora, you are the expert.
Okay. We're going to go with the Sturgeon press conference. But there are one or two other things. Richie Sunak seems to have changed his mind about furlough. You picked up something about the advocates in Scotland not being
very unhappy. Very unhappy.
And there's a couple of other things. Another dodgy deal done for a Tory councillor getting an untendered contract. Let's start with Sturgeon now.
Yes. What did we have? We had a difficult day because this is the beginning of lockdown 2, even if it is lockdown light. So this is like the 23rd of March all over again, but as the First Minister herself said, modified. I tried to watch the BBC One version, but you only get about 10 minutes, and the thing goes on for an hour.
It's about 20 minutes now.
Are you sure? It seemed to just all be gone.
It's usually about 25 to the hour.
You only get 2 questions.
Aye.
And the point that we watch it for the questions more than anything else, because
but it's still, the whole thing's still on the BBC Scotland channel, which is channel 9 on Freeview, I think.
Yeah, 115 on my Sky, but of course.
But you'll find it somewhere if you want it. Well, all the questions today were about the difference between a cafe and a restaurant.
Yeah.
So I've got a definition.
Good. I'm glad. I'm waiting for this.
A bacon and egg doubler for round about $2.50 makes you a cafe. Okay.
An all-day breakfast.
A Canadian bacon and free-range egg doubler at £12.50 makes you a restaurant.
Ooh.
That's how it works. On a brioche bun.
Or an Eggs Benedict.
Well, yeah, Eggs Benedict. What cafe do you know does Eggs Benedict?
That's true. What about a McDonald's? Is that a cafe or a restaurant?
Well, it doesn't have a license, so it's a cafe.
Oh, that's true. Well, it never occurred to me that they don't have a license.
Well, the argument is about if you've got a license, you should shut. So if you don't have a license, you're a cafe.
Well, I think
which brings in another strata that hasn't been brought up. Nobody in the mainstream media has thought of this particular trip up point. What about restaurants that don't have a license to sell alcohol?
Bring your own bottle.
Yeah. Are they cafes or restaurants? The other thing that amazes me is none of the Scottish press seem to realise premises are no longer licensed.
Yes, that's what I noticed. So, but is a person licensed for a premises?
Right. You get the license as an individual. Okay, you can be the manager, the owner, the owner's mother, but you're responsible then for making sure the license is followed.
So, the personal license isn't just portable.
Yes, it is. For instance, if you wanted to have an outside do with a bar, when I held a license, you could have come to me and said, Norrie, can we use your license for this event?
And you'd be responsible for the license.
I would be I'd be the one that goes to jail or gets fined £30,000.
Right.
Or whatever. So that's what came in with the new Scottish licensing laws.
So why didn't anybody trip her up on that then?
Well, what the argument kind of was, right, have you got a cafe license, a restaurant license, or a pub license? Well, they don't exist anymore because it's not the premise that's licensed. It's an individual is licensed. Now, you can get licensed as an individual. And what happens now is on that license, all the areas that you want licensed for, not areas like physical areas, but say you want to have a kids area in your licensed premise, right? And you're in the premises your license covers. You would then have stipulations, how many kids, whatever. So it's much more individually to what you want to do with that license. And it means that effectively they can arrest you. When it was a premises license, if anything went wrong, that nobody was ultimately responsible unless they were caught doing the wrongdoing. So effectively, they took your license away, your pub shut. Now they can take you to court, fine you, jail you, whatever, if there's nonsense going on in the premises that you have, if you like, licensed as an individual.
So what you're saying, when you get licensed as an individual, does that refer to any premises, or can you wander from pub to pub or restaurant to restaurant without license?
You as an individual, okay, you're only allowed to be responsible for one premise.
Okay.
So before, where one guy could own 8 pubs, the premises would be individually licensed, but he would be in control of the licenses. Now, in effect, if you've got 3 pubs, you need 3 people with licenses.
Right.
One for each premise.
That makes sense. I can follow that. One other question. See, I'm like one of these tricky journalists asking the First Minister asking you difficult questions. Over the period, obviously, recent months, I've been keeping up to speed with what's been happening in Ireland. And in Ireland, they've been making a clear distinction between pubs that sell food and pubs that don't. And there's been a clear distinction what they could and couldn't do. That doesn't matter in this country.
Yes, it does. Well, they could do that, but you need a license to sell food, right? You need a license to sell alcohol. You need a license to sell food. The licensing boards of each council cover the alcohol license, and the environmental health cover the food licenses.
Right.
So you get a license, you can have a license to sell cold food.
And you get a certificate for your quality of cleanliness and things. Is that the same thing?
Yeah. So and there are numerous levels of that license. You can have a non-preparatory license. You don't prepare food on the premises. You buy it all in. You have cold food. You have hot food.
Oh yeah, I'm aware of that. It's always a controversial one. Hot food license takeaway. That's what people complain about. That's usually like the late night chippy.
Yeah. So, that's why environmental health are the people you should be asking about whether you're a cafe or not.
Okay, well, thanks for all that, Norrie. I think it was that you and I and the viewers and listeners are probably a lot better informed than half the journalists.
Well, I did get a bit animated with some of the things the journalists were saying. I understand everybody that isn't involved in the trade probably still thinks that it's the premises that's licensed, and therefore the licensing board should be able to tell you whether it's a cafe or not.
Well, can I just try and shorthand what the First Minister was trying to do? She would have shut all cafes and restaurants, but apparently she wanted cafes. I think she could have made it clearer herself. She did at some point mention it's like for somewhere for people who are on their own to go and meet other people.
Yeah.
And I suppose it given that the 23rd of March, when the equivalent was brought in, we were heading into spring, and therefore it was in theory possible to meet somebody on a park bench.
Yeah.
At this time of year, we're heading into winter, so I can imagine they're thinking, well, we're going to need somewhere for lonely, suicidal people to meet somebody else, and that's the cafe.
And they've obviously put a bit of thought into it, because they really changed the guidance from licensed premises to cafes being exempt. And I think the big thing that came out of it for me was the explanation of what they were trying to achieve.
Hmm.
What she basically said was, we're trying to cut down the number of places people can meet.
Hmm.
So no restaurants, no pubs, but we're leaving cafes open for people who live on their own or can't stand their husband all day in the house alone.
You know, the general impression you get by the journalists, they are just looking for trouble. I mean, yeah, that's their job. But also, strangely enough, at times like this, you've got the white boys thinking, now where is that gap in the law that I can make money? You know what I mean? I can stay open because of some regulation or other.
Yeah,
And everybody will pile into my bar or my cafe
yeah.
or my empty scout hall, and we'll all bring our own bottles and we'll all watch the footy. Oh, I shouldn't have said that. Maybe that's what'll
Well,
happen.
yeah. Well, you're not alone. Our friend Ian McGill was retweeted by George Fuchs. Apparently, North Queensferry is open for business.
That's
South
right.
Queensferry isn't.
Mhm.
Oh, everybody will be nipping over the water, over the bridge. And I could just say, that's it, you know. Let's
They're running
attack.
coaches.
Well, let's attack the Scottish government, not the virus. You know, it's not helpful. And these, well, one's a wannabe politician, Ian McGill, a Tory in Edinburgh, and one's a Lord. And instead of saying, you know, stick to your own area, help this work, they're both essentially making suggestions of how you can make sure it doesn't work.
Mm.
You know, who needs friends when you've got enemies like that?
Makes a change.
But that was the big thing I took, was this admitting that what this is about is shutting down the number of places people can socialize.
Again, she's very fortunate to have Jason Leach to bring on, because he, on the communicating things like that, he is excellent.
Well, that was another thing I took away from it. Jason Leach made a statement right at the very end that really encapsulated the whole argument for this version of lockdown. And I think Nicola Sturgeon would have been better to say, thanks very much, Jason.
Yeah.
We'll just shut things down now. But she went on to do her "My heart's bleeding for everybody."
Or before we go on to the rest of the press briefing, can I just summarize one or two other things that were announced at the start? There's walk-in testing stations. We discovered that there are already 2 in Glasgow, 1 in Edinburgh, 1 in St Andrews, and 1 in Aberdeen. But I was struck by where there'll soon be 1 in Dundee and soon be 1 in Inverness. There's 1 opening in Stirling tomorrow, and 1 opening in Old Kilpatrick. Now, I know Old Kilpatrick, there's not a lot there. I'm just wondering why
Maybe there is now.
Maybe there's a student, maybe there's a cluster of student buildings or something.
I
anyway.
I think effectively, if you want to know where they are and where they're going to open, look for universities and further education colleges.
Old Kilpatrick is kind of underneath, more or less underneath the Erskine Bridge and at the end of the canal. But anyway, I'm sure somebody who lives around there will be able to refresh my memory why there would be a walk-in testing centre there. The other thing that was announced, of course, was a summary. Jason Leach made a summary of the stats, a summary of the paper, which I have downloaded, but I must admit I haven't read, which was the evidence that the politicians then made their decisions on about what restrictions we were going to get.
Well, I'd no sooner finished reading that than I listened to the Spectator podcast with our friend Fraser Nelson, who quite boldly stated that the Scottish government should publish the evidence for this lockdown.
All right.
So I intend to email him with the various links to the Scottish government site so he doesn't make that mistake, out of ignorance, of course, in the nicest possible way. Ignorance in the sense of lack of knowledge about where he can get the information.
I'm not going to try and go through the detail of any of the data that he did announce, but he did say that the number of infections was doubling every 9 days. They calculate as 2,900 fresh infections a day.
And that information was Wednesday.
And that was Wednesday last
So
week.
it was 3 days ago.
3 days ago, so this week. The last time the death rate was where it is now was back in March.
Yeah, it was at the start of the pandemic. But always keep in mind we're testing a lot more people now. I think the
Well,
other.
that's what I'm not 100%. But yes, we're testing more, but a lot more. That's another story.
Oh, we're testing a lot more than we tested in March.
Well, we're testing 6,500 a day at the moment over on a weekly, but averaged out over the week.
It's a lot more than we did in March.
Well, I hope so.
The other thing I suppose worth mentioning, she was questioned about the £40 million that's available for businesses. Now, it appears Rishi Sunak is about to announce another furlough scheme. And the scuttlebutt is that it'll be at the same level as the first one, 80% from the government. Now, it's been the usual suspects on, well, everybody, in fact, on Twitter is calling it a U-turn.
It's not.
I'm a bit uncomfortable with that.
It's only for specific areas, only if you've got lockdowns.
But, everybody's saying, oh, he changed the furlough scheme. He's not sticking to it. It's a U-turn. I don't think it's a U-turn. I think it's a reassessment of the situation in real time. That's what I think. I see no mileage in denigrating anybody for doing the right thing. If Rishi Sunak is going to do this, it's the right thing to do, and he should be congratulated for having the courage to reassess his position. Now, that's me talking about a Tory, so you won't hear that very often.
No, you don't hear that every day. Well, look, the First Minister said they had 3 strands of the Scottish support, £40 million. The first strand, well, she wouldn't cover that. She said she's waiting for, she was aware that the Sunak had a plan, so he was waiting for the figures for that. The second strand was a cash grant for businesses forced to close. You either get £1,000 or £1,500. This is just for a fortnight, bear in mind, guys. You get £1,000 or £1,500, depending on your business rateable value.
Yep.
And the third one would, as a fund, it would be handled by the council. And this is for businesses that don't fall into the categories for the strand 2. So these might be businesses that don't actually have premises where they have a rateable value, but they might even have, might still have business.
Well, they've got, they don't have rates to pay at the moment, but they've got rent to pay. And I suppose the important thing about that is it's a giveaway. It's a grant.
Grant, yeah.
It's not a loan, so they're not adding to the debt burden, which £40 million is quite a lot of money for the Scottish government. Especially
just for a fortnight. It's not,
and that worries me.
It worries me. I mean, there has been stories that some of this kind of money, apart from these contracts that the government hands out to their brothers and their aunties and their friends in the corner shop just because they like them, there is a possibility organised crime has been making a mint out of some of this money that they've been handing out. Almost certainly the case, let's be honest.
Did Panorama not do a program about that where they reckoned it was being scammed? I think, well, to be honest with you, I hope that they wrote that in because it was delivered in a super quick time. for government schemes, and I doubt they'll have managed to close every loophole.
I'm absolutely sure in 5 years' time, when this is all over and they do all this inquiries and all the rest of it, billions of pounds will have been corruptly gone.
Yeah,
I guarantee it. I'd put my life on the line for that.
but I think in a way that's a cost of being quick.
Yeah, what choices have you got? Shall I
Uh,
lighten things up a bit? We've got more to go, mind you, haven't we? The First Minister seemed to be wanting to try to joke, or was it the hacks?
no, it was the first
The very
question.
first question. How do you define the difference between a cafe and a restaurant? Well, we know that this is the issue of the day. But the first hack, what did they ask us? Apparently, a few years ago, there was an argument of what's a Jaffa cake? Is that a cake or a biscuit? And this was a question of what category did it fall into for VAT? And so that became a bit lighthearted.
Can you remember? I'm sure a Jaffa cake is a cake now.
Now you've got me.
For definition.
I buy Jaffa Cakes. I must admit that the last time I bought a packet of Jaffa Cakes was probably only a fortnight ago. So, what else? One or two other light-hearted things. Some other hack was in a ITV. Was in a cafe somewhere in South Glasgow, and he did say that it was in the First Minister's constituency, and she said, "I know where you are." She recognised the cafe, and then she was doing well for the lightheartedness. There was also a question about Arran. Ayrshire and Arran is a health board. Arran, if you don't know, is an island, big island, but it is an island. Ayrshire is much more. I would have said it was West Coast Central Belt, but that was another issue. But anyway, there was a question. Arran hasn't got any COVID at the moment. They wanted to be exempt of these regulations. So the First Minister was saying, well, that's all very well, but I'm from Ayrshire, and as far as Ayrshire people are concerned, they're not in the Central Belt, and they don't want to have the same restrictions either. So she was going on about that.
Well, I think that the other point she made, because this came up with Orkney, I think it was, in the Parliament a few weeks ago, was her point was, if you don't want to have the restrictions, I'm afraid you'll be subjected to travel restrictions.
That's
People
right.
will not be allowed to travel to bring it to you, which I think is a fair point.
It's a balance, yes. And she kind of offered it to presumably the leader of the Orkney Islands Council, and they decided, oh no, okay, I have to accept that, because otherwise we'd have heard, I'm sure.
I mean, I do think as this goes on, we'll find it being more and more targeted. And I think it'll get stricter. The smaller the targeting is, the travel restriction thing will have to become stricter. Because they did that in Italy. They basically chopped the country in half, closed the border between the north and the south, and it seemed to have worked. Because the south had a lot lower prevalence than the north.
I suspect, yes. I mean, the term "the new normal." I think I've mentioned this in recent days. I think, well, we're already into a 6-month restricted period. I think is more or less what we've been told, and then there could be another 6 months. So that would be altogether 18 months, which I must admit was what was threatened at the start of this, I think.
Well, there's now some evidence that we shouldn't be expecting to be able to get inoculated against it. There are some experts think it's going to be a bit like the flu.
No, the flu's all right. Well, to some extent.
No, I mean as far as it coming round every year.
Yeah, around every year. And bear in mind, it is actually a coronavirus, not the flu. And the common cold is a coronavirus, and when they've been looking for it, there is no inoculation for the common cold. So I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I saw, and without mentioning Trump, but there you go. Who knows? What else?
The United States president that doesn't know what a cure is.
Oh, goodness me. The First Minister even had a referenced last night's football result for the Scotland team. Deary me.
Oh, that was a cracking question. And when are you going to cancel the Old Firm game?
I know. There you go. Well, I was saving that bit. I've lost my punchline. Never mind.
Sorry,
No,
sorry.
that's all right.
Stole
That's
your
all right.
thunder.
But no, she did say, "Oh, I have to say, offer my congratulations to the Scotland team." It was for the first time, virtually first time ever, they've qualified for the next round of something on a penalty shootout, which apparently was almost the first time
Against Israel.
against Israel. Oh, one piece of bad news, and this is personal, that the number one risk, comorbidity, as they say, for COVID is heart failure. Thanks. At least I know. I suppose another interesting area was, apart from the Old Firm game, we went. Don't get me going, because I contributed to, I think it was something on Twitter yesterday, and some American was asking about why did football matter so much, and what was the link to the virus, and I got involved in it at some point, and I said, well, oh yeah, I know. The question was, why is Scotland so poor at football? And this was an American. And somebody was saying, well, look at the number of people you've got in America, and we're only a wee country. I chipped in and said, well, the reason was a poor football, considering how keen we are on football, is it's corrupt in this country. And I pointed out that you've got the top league. It's like a game of 12 people sit round a table to play cards. Two of those people have got a 10 times bigger stake of money than the other 10. And halfway through the game, they can buy your best cards. So if that's not corrupt, what is?
American football's like that as well.
I thought they had a system where every year the
Yeah,
team at the bottom of the league gets a pick of the best new coming up from college or something like that.
Yeah, but they still have to pay for it.
Oh, right. Okay. Right.
For the player. You know, so if you're particularly good at coaching guys up to a higher level, you end up getting them bought off you, traded off you. All professional sport has that. I mean, rugby has turned out as it was promised it wouldn't happen in rugby, and it took it 3 seasons. I mean, one of the teams.
Was it Saracens that fell foul of this?
Yeah, because he wanted better players, so he was paying them off the books. Yeah. So, and I'll give rugby its due. It really hammered them.
It really did hammer them.
It hammered them. Although they've just got into a cup final. In fact, they may have just won it. But there you go. What else came up today? I've had enough of the presser.
Oh, well, I've got one last thing in the presser because it does relate. It was compliance. Scott McNabb, as a Scotsman, was asking about how many people are complying. And we've heard figures from England that it was as low as 20% of people were admitting their compliance. The figures for Scotland, 1/8 don't comply with not meeting other people, but the 38% claim they're not fully compliant, but more or less compliant. And what is it? It's a 2-week stop to plan for other areas. Oh yes, that's the other thing. What this 16-day break is, they have other plans. So goodness knows whether they'll be good or bad plans. I'm finished.
On a general note, in fact, I do think it was Jason Leach again who said that everybody is scrambling about to find an effective balance. And that, I think, is true of every country in the world. Yeah. But because every country is different, demographically, the spread of the jobs, all that kind of thing, it's going to be really hard to find it. I don't think you'll be able to copy it from another country, put it that way. Well, the difference, just look at the difference in our own, in the union. You know, the Welsh government, Irish government, Scottish government, English government are all doing different things because the demography is different. I don't know what's happened to Northern Ireland. They were doing really, really well. And they've fallen off the cliff a bit. recently.
Oh yeah, I noticed
Said
that
there's-
there seemed to be the Irish Prime Minister Taoiseach apparently was making appeals on behalf of Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland were having the same problem about needing. They wanted to put in restrictions, shut places
for
down, and
money,
then
yeah.
support businesses, and they did. Just like in Scotland, they weren't getting the money from Sunak, and the Irish Prime Minister apparently was appealing to Boris Johnson on the phone. Give the money to Northern Ireland because it affects the Southern Ireland. You know.
Do you think that? Do you think that has been a strand of the Brexit talks recently?
Well, it's an interesting angle, isn't it? It's slightly surprising that you need the leader of a foreign country to make an appeal on your behalf just to do the right thing.
Well, I see Frankie Boyle's come up with a solution to the furlough thing. Just keep paying everybody for a year and don't buy Trident.
Yeah, well, that's another.
Or renew Trident, rather.
I'll go for that.
What else caught your eye today, then?
The elite of the Scottish legal system, the faculty of advocates, are very angry. They've written to the Secretary of State for the Home Department, Priti Petal, or all properly known Priti Patel. It's all a question of how you pronounce it, isn't it? She's a horror. Anyway, I don't know if you've noticed, but I think it's Hancock, but certainly Priti Patel and Boris Johnson, oh no, and Cummings. They've actually mentioned, and they've written to all three of them, but they're mainly to the Home Secretary to complain. They're very angry because they feel the public announcements by these three people, Cummings, Johnson, and Patel, are promoting violence against lawyers.
This was the softy left-wing lawyers taking the government to court over immigration and things.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Now they're pointing out that I can't speak for England on this issue, but they pointed out in this very interesting letter that in Scotland, you don't get to choose your lawyer as in these particular cases. It's like a cab rank. It's the lawyer that's next in line
Next
that you
available.
get, next available that you get as a defense. They'll take your case. And they're very, very angry. And if you upset lawyers, you know what it's like. You don't want to upset your lawyer.
That can't be across the board.
It could be very different in England.
Because what's the Glasgow lawyer, Amir?
Amir Ahn, I'm sorry, but I could be wrong.
Yeah.
Don't crucify me if I've got it wrong.
He's kind of our headline. I was going to say socialist, but that don't think that's true.
Does he qualify as a lefty lawyer?
Well, if you judge him by the cases he takes, yes, obviously, and that by their definition, because he fights an awful lot of cases against government.
Let's be honest, Norrie.
Both Scottish government and British government.
Yeah, let's be honest. We don't want to go down and get involved in that kind of argument about trying to decide the definition. But let's put it this way: the elite faculty of advocates in Scotland are very angry, and as I say, I wouldn't want to cross them.
Try to think. The only lefty lawyer I can think of would be Colin Fox's sister.
Nigel, my lawyer, Nigel Beaumont, not only is he lefty, he's a character, because when you see him, he looks like a Hell's Angel aboard his Harley, setting off home from work.
What caught my eye? I see there's another scandal brewing. Some unsuccessful Tory businessman who's a councillor has been handed a contract, was handed a contract for...
How come you and I are not in this league?
156 million.
Well, I'll
tell you what, Stuart.
I'd settle for 500,000. I'm not fussy.
I imported stuff from China. And this guy got a contract for I think it was 156 million to import PPE from China. And it's not difficult. What you do is you get an agent in China who goes and checks the gear in China, makes sure it's to standard on your behalf. It then gets packed in boxes and sent to you. You have more trouble dealing with the import agency in the UK than you do with the Chinese side. And I have no idea what the profit margin on that would be. But I would imagine it'll be slightly more than 20 pence.
You can go to Alibaba.com as well, can't you?
Yeah, I mean, it looks quite daunting initially, but they even produce copies in English of what little you need to fill in for the Chinese side of it. It's very straightforward. Once you've done it once, it's easy.
I mean, I've ordered, what was I ordered strangely? It was sealing wax, red sealing wax. Most people won't even know what you're talking about. Doesn't matter. Anyway, it was only £3.50. And after I'd ordered it, I discovered it was coming direct from China. It took about 3 weeks, but it arrived and it did the job.
No, we had no problems with that. Even the failure rate was within the parameters it was supposed to be. So no complaints about the Chinese.
No, I'm quite happy with the Chinese products that I've had.
But anyway,
the instructions, as they say, Chinglish at times. We used to be, in the days when everything came from Taiwan rather than mainland China, that some of the instructions were really vague.
So that's another wee Tory scandal ongoing.
Right.
Is there anything else?
Yes, I think so. There's the list parties, because Peter A. Bell is having a go at them. No happy. Peter A. Bell is a critical friend, shall we say. Now, he's very supportive. He says it's both, as far as he's concerned, for the Holyrood election, it's both votes SNP, 1 and 2. Doesn't like the list parties, and he's very, he'd be very happy to discover that the Electoral Commission forced one of these list parties to change their name because they didn't qualify. I don't know why, but
I don't even know why we're talking about this until they bring out a manifesto. And if the manifesto says basically anybody who's got any beliefs at all, as long as they believe in independence, can join our party, I won't be voting for them.
I'm just saying that, given that I like a lot of what Peter says, but he could be right for all I know. You have said yourself that you feel that all these list parties could damage the SNP. Have you not?
Yeah, and there's every possibility. I mean, they have to get
6% was his
6 to 7%
before they get one MSP.
Yeah, and if that's at the cost of an MSP seat, what's the point?
An SNP seat.
Sorry, SNP
it's all right.
seat.
You won't be the first person to make that.
So what I need to see is, where are they going to stand? Well, first off, what do they stand for? Where are they going to stand, and who their candidate is?
As far as I know, they're likely
candidates.
I know you've got 7 regions. Is that right? I think we've got for the lists.
Well, I mean, I need to catch up on it again. It's been a while.
And you get 3. You're right. I know. God, we used to be red hot on that.
Well, the other thing is,
elections, we could tell you everything.
It'll be interesting because at the moment, Wings Over Scotland seems to be leaning towards it as being a good idea. In the past, its position with Rise, etc., was always it was a bad idea. Now, I expect him to be honest about this because he's brutally honest most of the time. So I would see him crunching the numbers.
So the Alliance for Independence have now had to change their name to Action for Independence. and I think who's Tommy Sheridan supporting? There was another party organising. They're called the ISP or something.
Well,
Independent
that's
Scotland Party.
see, that's the other problem. I mean, if
which
there was one party, if they all came under one heading, there's a chance.
And then
but if there's already what, 3 of them,
and then you've got the man with the hat in the cat suit, his party.
that's a different thing. But how many
Oh, it's just another
independent
list party.
supporting list parties are there going to be?
I have no idea. Honestly, no idea. I mean, when the notion, well, the idea first got into my head, I was thinking, well, good luck to them, because I mean, over the years we've got used to anything like the half a dozen sort of independents at by-elections, and that they don't seem to make much impression. But unless you're screaming Lord Such,
I do think that they might be useful in gilding the SNP up as far as their policy on a new independence referendum. And as much as if they look capable, the SNP are going to have to be on their game, because one of the big problems at the next Holyrood election, I think, is going to be the problem we had at 2017 general election, where there were too many people too complacent. We need to get the vote out in 2021.
They reckon there was 500,000 pro-independence voters didn't vote at that election.
Well, we can't afford that. We really need to get the vote out, and possibly if there is a list party, an independent supporting list party out and about, that'll gildy the activists in the SNP.
Oh, well, it wasn't been.
Hopefully.
What have I got to finish up with? Do you want to finish up yet?
I think we're getting there, eh? The only thing I saw a clip of Kate Forbes. Did I show it yesterday?
I think so, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Some guy was Tory or somebody was mansplaining him. Alex Burnett.
That's right. I did show it because that's been my highlight of the week so far. She's very capable.
I've got the private eye.
All right.
COVID crisis. So the world's holding its breath. So the question is, it's got Donald Trump is saying, is it serious? And the doctor says, yes, you might recover. Then he says, Trumpman says, I'd like to shake the hand of every person treating me. And then they've got him in the presidential car, which obviously looks like a hearse, doesn't it? I'm proving I'm not dead by driving around very slowly in a long black vehicle.
I saw a good clip of some actress, older woman, being interviewed on the red carpet at some do, and the guy said, and would you like Donald Trump to come and see you? She said, oh, he won't see me because if he comes, I won't go on stage. I won't act. And he said, oh, and why is that? And she turned around and said, I hate this son of a bitch.
Right. And you know that there was the corner picture of the doctors. Sorry.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, all in the white, the men all in the white coats. Now, I don't know about you, Dory, but when you see, we talk about when the men in the white coats come for you, that means you're a loony, aren't you? You're going to the loony bin.
Lost it. Aye.
Lost it. So it's a bit like when you use the word fanny in Scotland. It means something completely different than it does in America, or fag. Anyway, men in white coats in Scotland does not mean respectable.
Is it not the case that these are all sort of army doctors? Do they not have epaulets on their white coats?
Anyway, they're incapable of turning up on their own. There's about 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 of them, just for one person to speak. And somebody shouts to the guy at the lectern, is the president getting better? No, he's still completely useless.
We'll leave it at that, I think.
I'll leave the story at that.
Jimmy's working, folks. If you're worried about him, he's not ill. He's getting his hands dirty at the coalface.
And if you get in his taxi, leave him a very big tip.
Aye. We should really publicise his number so you can phone him directly. Nah, we're not going to do that because you'll get too busy to appear on the show. I think we need his input. Although, as I did say yesterday, you and I have managed not to have an argument today. So it is Jimmy. He is the catalyst.
Yeah. I did have it just occurred to me, I did have a graphic to put behind me rather than the bar, but that's the Ben Nevis bar, if you don't know, guys. Apparently the guy that's suing, David Henry, West Edinburgh SNP activist. Now, who's he suing? He's suing somebody. Anyway, he's standing for the NEC.
Oh yeah, I saw that. Yeah, he's been quite regularly on Twitter.
Yeah, so he's standing for the NEC as the members champion. Roger Mullen, now he also is standing for the NEC. But as I recall, he's totally in with the bricks. Maybe not. He's been in the establishment SNP for a while.
Yeah, but he's not happy about what the goings on.
Right. So he's another rebellious name standing for the NEC.
I think so. Okay. I hope they can do it democratically. I hope they can sort it out by electing new members. I'm not that confident that they'll get enough. Maybe. Who knows?
Who knows?
Okay.
We've given a shout to those two, so the best of them. Best of
luck. Thanks for appearing, Stuart.
Okay.
I'm Norrie Stewart. Thanks for listening, folks. Day off tomorrow. And we'll see you on Sunday after the politics programme.
Oh.
If there's any politics. I don't know if the Scottish politics programme will be on this week. It wasn't last week, was it?
Are they on their fortnight's recess now here?
Well, they're obviously not because they're in Parliament. BBC just probably thought it wasn't worth showing. And on that happy note, cheers, folks. As I say, thank you for listening.